So welcome to tonight's information session. I am Lucas Simmons and my lovely colleague Tracy Reed is here. We are holistic nutrition professionals. We are coming to you from Treaty 7 territory, nestled in the foothills of Alberta, the traditional land of the Stoney Nakoda, Piikani, and Kainai tribes and peoples. And we are so glad to be coming your way from the place they call Calgary. We are hoping to share with you tonight some of the ideas behind what exactly Kitchen Haven 101 is all about. Because when you're starting to figure out that there's a histamine potentially playing a role in how your symptoms are expressing every day, it starts to get really overwhelming quite quickly. And so our goal with how we wanted to build this program was to offer an entry point for people who may feel like they're able to make lots of food at home, have maybe tried a protocol or two of other kinds, and their symptoms are just not clear enough. So we're going to address some of the pieces that we hope will help you go, oh yeah, that's what I want. But if you have any questions as you go throughout, please pop them in the chat below. Okay. So welcome. I'm Lucas Simmons and Tracy here. We are Histamine Haven. Let's talk a little bit about Kitchen Haven 101. What was I'm going to start you off, Tracy. What was your impetus? What was your thought when we first put this program together of what this could be about?
Yeah, so I think, both you and I are pretty adept in the kitchen. We have a lot of background with different protocols, and both of us, particularly with a protocol called GAPS. So that's an acronym for the gut and psychology syndrome. And so, had some familiarity with a bunch of different protocols. Nothing was really working for my own health. And so for those of you who haven't met me before, I've been diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome. And in fact, doing all the right things were kind of backfiring a little bit, and some new symptoms developed. So just want to help people navigate, I guess, some of what, we've had to go through in our own experience, and to help people make that a bit of a smoother transition than kind of the bumps that you and I both experienced along the way.
Yeah.
Luca, do you want to maybe tell everybody what the goal of Kitchen Haven 101 is?
Yeah, so Kitchen Haven 101 is different from the other programs that we have on offer. The whole goal of it is that we want to start addressing some of those underlying factors that could be contributing to whatever's happening in your scenario. So we have here at Histamine Haven, we might talk about this a little bit later. We actually have 3 stages to the protocol. And the first stage is stage 1. Stage 2 is a detective phase, and stage 3 is a nutrient density phase. So the first stage is that first safest haven stage that is the lowest histamine and the lowest in any compounds that could potentially be contributing to however your symptoms are showing up in the body. For some, that might be oxalates. For others, it might be salicylates. I'm starting to hear actually that sulfur foods can also trip certain reactions. FODMAPs can show up in the picture. There's all these food compounds that happen to be in what appears to be quite healthful foods. But when you consume them, for you, reactions start to show up. And figuring out what are those compounds for yourself is a tricky little piece of the puzzle. But that's part of what we're going to cover in Kitchen Haven 101 in our live Q&A sections. For sure, every week we'll be doing a little bit more deep dive into that and helping guide you through how to figure out what is the actual safest food list for you. And we start with a pretty generic one that is low histamine, it's low mold, low lectin. We have those options to make it low oxalate, low salicylate. And if you are currently following an AIP protocol, then our protocol can fit alongside going an AIP route, if you will, which a lot of people who have autoimmune disorders might tend to rely on. So the goal in Kitchen Haven 101 is to actually get your kitchen ready to go in to do stage 1. And the reason we wanted to do a sort of intro and prep piece is because if you go from, depends where you're at, if you're eating real food and you're pretty comfortable cooking from scratch in the kitchen, that's a great entry point. But if you're going to jump right into the Histamine Haven first stage, you are going to pull your hair out because there's such benefit in spending the couple of weeks beforehand, getting the kitchen ready, starting to build some of those batch prep items. And that's part of building those strategies and the sort of lifestyle hacks, I guess you could call them, or kitchen hacks, to help you get ready for doing that first stage. So you're learning what are sort of the guidelines, I suppose, that are suggested or recommended in that first stage, and then some lifestyle batch prep ideas, maybe meal planning ideas that come through along with that, some recipes as well. But our eventual goal is to help reduce the overwhelm, because it gets really quite convoluted when you start to figure out that histamine is a piece of the picture for you. So in this, we are clarifying, we are clearing away what no longer serves, and we are simplifying things to be able to have a very clear path going forward. And when you start to do that, you reduce the stress, because our goal is really to get you to feel better at the end of the day. Anytime you add stress to things, you drive the histamine response, whether it's a histamine intolerance issue or a mast cell activation. We also get into describing the difference between the two. What else am I missing? I guess we make food safer. The whole goal of this program is so that food can be your safe haven. We are really doing that safe haven. Yeah. Tracy, what do we cover in the 6 weeks of the program?
Okay, I'm just going to kind of list off things. So for those of you who are joining us this evening, this is kind of your chance to kind of figure out, okay, what am I looking for? Is this program going to be the right fit? So we're going to look at the difference. We'll be talking about the difference between histamine intolerance and mast cell activation syndrome. So there's some clarity around that. We'll be looking at prepping this, what we have kind of titled in our upcoming cookbook, our prep week, but we're breaking it down so it's at a nice, slow, super manageable pace. You'll get a really good clarification of what stage 1 foods are, what foods are going to be safest. We'll look at batch prepping, and you'll have recipes that you're going to experiment with each week to do some batch prep with. Which foods you want to be including, which ones you want to be replacing, finding alternatives for. We're going to talk about plant foods, kind of animal versus plant foods. And we have a really good conversation around protein and what kind of protein is going to be best for you. And we'll also be talking about the wonderful world of fats, these ever important fats that are so important to stabilize mast cell membranes. We're also going to look at budgeting. So for those of you who are pretty conscious about your consumer dollars, we'll have some tips and strategies for you. We're also going to look at sourcing food. So there are some great strategies around sourcing that are a little bit different than just popping into your neighborhood grocery store, that are specific to keeping histamine low. What else? We're going to talk about cookware to use in the kitchen. And then a whole bunch of just little tips and lifestyle hacks that, Luke has already mentioned. We're going to touch on those. And we will also be talking about the role of stress in this course, because it is such an important topic. So we need to be introducing that. And as Luke has already said, really the end goal with all of this content is to have you ready in your kitchen at the end of the program so that you can move into our full-on Histamine Haven protocol.
That's awesome. No small feat.
Yeah, so that's a lot that I've just covered. Luca, can you give people a sense of what their actual weekly time commitment's going to look like?
For sure. So the best part about this whole program is that there's a weekly live Q&A portion to it. So we'll meet on Zoom. It'll be very informal, and we may have some ideas on where to start and questions to ask. But this is the place where we all meet with what's happening in your kitchen. How's it going, everybody? And then if you have any stumbling blocks, then we work at clearing those away. You connect with other people who are doing the work with you, so that weekly hour-long live Q&A happens for each of the weeks of the program. We've stretched it out to be 6 weeks. So we have 6 Fridays, in fact, where we will be addressing the questions that you have. And it doesn't have to pertain necessarily to the program. It is anywhere you need clarification or ways to make this work for you. So it's included in the cost, that 1 hour chat. We have 4 weeks. Within that 6 weeks, we have 4 different modules that we go through. And for each module, there's the actual video content, which is pre-recorded. Then there's also a recipe module that comes in that same week, a few days later, to sort of space it out. So on, for example, like that first week is going to be sitting down to just do a meet and greet and to answer any questions about the program, going into things and helping you highlight maybe what are your main symptoms that are showing up, and starting you in on a tracking worksheet, so that you can get the lay of the land and sort of get your point zero. Where did you start? How did you feel right at the get-go? Then we get that first bunch of videos, and they're shorter clips from anywhere from 5-6 minutes. I think our longest one is 21 minutes.
Yeah.
But in total, every week you'll have about 60 minutes. Most weeks, the protein week, we have 90 minutes, because protein ends up being a very complicated subject. And so that's the only one where you get an hour and a half, but that is not the first week. That's not where we start. Don't worry. So we keep it a bit manageable, hopefully, with those chunked out videos. Total content, 60 minutes most weeks. But they're broken up, right? So if, like, when you get the modules on Saturday morning, for example, if that's the day they're being delivered, then you're able to watch an 8-minute one with your breakfast. And then on Sunday at lunch, you can watch the next one. So you can go through the content at your own pace. And because we're meeting every Friday for those 6 Fridays in a row, we've kind of got a bunch of people going, did you do the work? Did you do it? Did you do it? So you have some accountability. You got somebody checking in on you. And so you sort of feel a little bit of push behind you to get you to watch those videos, to get the content, and to make it a part of how you're going to approach building that kitchen. So that's 60 to 90 minutes of video a week recorded, the 1 hour live Q&A. There's also a bunch of recipes that come. So all in all, we are right now, as it stands, our weekly live Q&As are going to be Fridays at 12:30 for 1 hour. That's 12:30 Mountain Time, whether daylight or whichever time of year we're at. That may change depending on who's in it. The recording is always available afterwards for 5 days, so that you can watch the replay. You have the chance to send your questions in beforehand if that timeline doesn't work. So we'll always be able to address your questions. You do not have to do this alone. If we asked you to do this by yourself, you would cry in the corner and you wouldn't get anywhere, and your histamine issues would get worse. That is not how you build a safe haven. You need to build a safe haven. So that's our goal. We want you to feel supported, and we want you to feel comfortable and confident moving forward in putting those pieces we talk about. And just one last note, we do, it's 6 weeks of classes that we've got that we're meeting, but there's only 4 weeks of videos. So you have a good 4 or 5 weeks to get through that content. And we meet one last time at the end to see, okay, you've been putting all these pieces in place now for a week. How's it going? At that point, you're essentially in stage 1 of the Histamine Haven protocol. So that's the time commitment every week. Let's talk about the different topics we're going to be covering, the kinds of things. You take this one.
Okay, well, I think we've already given you a pretty good sense of some of the specifics that we're covering, but we're a little bit different, or hopefully a lot different from, low histamine food lists that you've seen out there, or people advocating for a low histamine diet, because we're trying to address root cause, the contributing factors to why you're struggling. And it's not just about histamine in food. So one of the things, or a couple of the areas that we'll be covering, are attempting to address what's contributing to your overall symptom profile and why histamine is problematic for you. So we'll be looking at gut health, because gut health is imperative for any health condition, regardless of whether histamine's involved or not. we'll be looking at detoxification because you have to move those histamines, the spent ones, out of your body as well. So it's not just about what you're taking in through food, it's also about your body's ability to move it out once you're done with it. So that detoxification, that liver component is really, really important in histamine clearance. We've already touched on lifestyle stuff, so we'll be looking at lifestyle factors, stress being the biggest one. We're going to talk about or kind of encompass immune regulation in all of this as well. So our protocol is very much about regulating the immune system and stabilizing the mast cells, because this is really, really important where histamine is involved. Also nutrient density. So we want every mouthful of food going into your body to be optimizing the amount of nutrition you're getting. So nutrient density is, I think, again, an area where what we're doing is quite different from what else is out there. I think I've already mentioned this, but we'll be talking about budgeting and sourcing as well. So really, really important that you have the support that you need to find the ingredients that you need and will be using as you move forward, because again, they're not always in your neighborhood grocery store. So hopefully that covers kind of the broader look at addressing the contributing factors. And I think we've talked about this a little bit, Luca, but can you, if I've missed anything, can you touch on what makes our approach so special?
Yeah, we're quite different than some of the other low histamine protocols out there. I often say this, and sorry if you've heard this before, or this might be a new truth bomb for you. Going low histamine does not fix a histamine issue. I'm so sorry. So I really wish that would be like the magic bullet. Wouldn't it be so great? But going low histamine can be one of the tools in your toolkit that you can pull out. So this is what we clarify in our protocol. Going low histamine can be one of those allies when your histamine-mediated symptoms are showing up. And if you can understand and start to be able to decipher what are those signals that your body is sending, telling you that your histamines are a little too much right now. And we use the analogy of a sink. When your sink gets full and there's an overflow and now you got water falling on the ground, those are the symptoms. So how full is your sink full of water? Is the tap on all the time? Is the plug working at the bottom? And how is that overflow? When the water overflows is when the symptoms show up. A low histamine approach when it comes to food can be one of those helpers to turn off the tap. So in our program, what makes us different is that, yeah, we're talking low histamine. What are the foods that contain lower histamines? We also include the foods that have the potential of triggering your body to release more histamine. So it's not just low histamine foods, but we're also taking into consideration those foods that potentially trigger your system to dump more histamine. And that makes it rain even, or there's more water coming into your sink. Now that's the overflow. So as you reduce those two, you start to turn off the tap so that at least your sink is not on all the time. So that's a part of it. The other part of this is anybody who has a histamine intolerance or a mast cell activation as part of the picture going on, their body on some level doesn't feel safe. And so part of what we're doing as we go forward with the protocol and the ideas we are presenting, we're building that safety. You need to build the safety so the body feels safe. And as you increase that safe feeling in the body, you are going to reduce the body's need or drive to dump histamine. Creating that safety can look very simply as supporting blood sugar balancing. It can look like supporting the immune system. It can look like mast cell stabilizing foods. Mast cells are the cells of your immune system that have the potential of being triggered by certain types of foods to dump histamine into your system. So we need to help those mast cells feel a little bit more secure and less sensitive so that they don't dump that histamine. So we do that by creating safety in the body, and we look after your mast cells. So histamine haven is different because it's a low histamine protocol. It is low in the compounds that can further trigger your body to dump histamine. It is also nourishing for those root pieces that may be contributing to why histamine is an issue in the first place. And our goal is really to have you have as much variety and diversity as possible, because you're not supposed to be low histamine for the rest of time. The goal is that helps you manage symptoms while you do the work of figuring what's at the root, what are the triggers, and addressing those pieces at the same time. So it's a great tool to have in your toolkit when that sink is overflowing, but the goal is to get you more wiggle room in your sink over the course of time. So then the next question will be for you, how long can people access the recorded video content?
Always. So once you guys get those modules in your inbox, you will always have them. So you will always have access to the content. So if you find, in week 3, you're struggling a little bit to keep up, you don't have time to watch everything because things have picked up at work or in your family life, don't worry, you are always going to have those modules in your inbox. The Q&As that are every Friday, those will be available for the next 5 days. So you can access that then. I think that's all I need to say about course content availability, short and sweet. Luca, can you maybe really quickly tell people what, so our full protocol after Kitchen Haven 101 has 3 stages. Can you tell them about those 3 stages?
For sure. And it's hard to tell how long you're going to be in which stage, by the way, because that is always a question that comes up. Okay, well, how long do I have to do this? How long am I going to wait to see results? You're going to see results within at least a week, I guarantee you, if you're putting in that work. So that first stage, yeah, it's low histamine, but more than that, it is about creating that safe haven in the body. So yeah, low histamine. It is also low lectin. Lectins are one of the food compounds that trigger your mast cells of your immune system to release more histamine. Oh, did you want to turn the tap on full blast in the sink? I don't think so. So we reduce those foods that do that. It is also nightshade free. For many people, nightshades can be one of those food compounds that triggers the body not feeling safe. It is low mold. Mold has a potential of triggering your mast cells to release more histamine in your body.
Mold is very hidden. So we're not talking about visible, obvious mold here. There are a lot of foods that can contain mold that you would never guess.
Like grapes, like coffee. Don't worry, that's week 4. Don't start there. It is of course gluten-free and dairy-free as well. So if you are currently observing a dairy-free and gluten-free approach, then that continues through the program, and that can do a lot to actually reduce what is potentially contributing when histamine is part of the issue. We have ghee is the only dairy that we do have. We have goat cheese as well at some point. There's such rich nutrients in those foods, but they don't ghee is early in the stages, but we bring in the dairy into later stages for, again, the invitation to have as much variety and diversity. Does it mean you have to have it in there? No. If you'd rather keep it out because for you it is a trigger, then that's actually a really good one to continue keeping off of the table for the time being. So that first stage is about creating that safe haven. The second stage is doing that detective work to now figure out, okay, so we've been doing this for a bit. Now I need to know which foods are triggering symptoms for me. That's where we figure out the deeper compounds, things like oxalates, salicylates. FODMAPs can be some of those issues. That would be things like apples or garlic or onions, if you know that they make you super, super uncomfortable. Or sulfur foods, that can be another one that some people will react to. So there's different compounds, it depends. That's where we start to do the detective work. And at the same time, we're starting to bring in some of those perhaps not super duper high histamine foods, but a little bit higher histamine than the foods you had in that stage 1. And the reason is we want to start introducing a little bit of those foods so that we can continually challenge this. A long-term low histamine approach has the potential of making somebody nutrient deficient in some very key nutrients. For example, I always use this example, liver is perhaps higher up on the list of histamine, potentially. It is, there's a way to keep it low histamine while it is in process at the butchers, but you can't always guarantee that. But liver itself has some nutrients in it that help address root pieces that may potentially be behind why your body dumps histamine or doesn't feel safe. So when you nourish for safety with a higher histamine food, you bring that in stage 3, in that third stage where we add in that nutrient density piece. So it is a fine balance that sort of comes and goes to try to work those pieces in, but we get you eating as much as we can, as much diversity and variety as soon as we can, because, and the recipes that we share, I think are really yummy, fairly straightforward to make in a home kitchen. The harder to find ingredients, we do talk in, as Tracy was saying, about where to source those. But the goal is to leave you feeling good and abundant and as if this is like a super fun adventure, because that can do a lot to reduce the stress. And when you, again, reduce the stress, key piece of reducing what's driving potentially the histamine issues. How do people know if this is the right program for them? What are some questions they can ask themselves?
Okay, so this gets down to really helping you now identify, like if you specifically are a candidate for this program. So I think, first of all, if things feel a little overwhelming in the kitchen, if you say, yeah, sometimes this is all a bit overwhelming, then this would be the program for you. If you've read about histamine intolerance, or you have mast cell activation syndrome, then this is a great program for you. If you maybe haven't been diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, but you've been reading up on it, you've looked at that whole crazy long symptom profile, and you're like, yeah, gee, I think this is me. This is the program for you. You don't have to have a diagnosis to join us. If you're fairly confident in the kitchen, and I know Luca's touched on this already, but if you're doing some home cooking, then this is the program for you. If you're doing a lot of packaged foods or you're eating out a lot, then we would really encourage you to start with food foundations before joining us for Kitchen Haven 101. If you've done other protocols, like dietary protocols, and they haven't worked for you. So if you've done gluten-free, dairy-free, if you've tried low histamine, if maybe you've tried an autoimmune protocol or one of the kind of gut supporting protocols, and you're like, this just is not working. I'm still missing something. I think Luca and I both went through that. Then this would be the program for you. If you just want some support along the way, right? This is why we're calling it Kitchen Haven. We want it to be the safe place. We want it to be a supportive place. So then this would be for you as well. If you like the idea of somebody holding you accountable and keeping you motivated and keeping you on track, then this is the program for you. That's what our weekly Q&A sessions are designed for, so that you have the support that you need, and that you maybe have that little peer pressure piece to keep you going. Your peers or the other people in the group are going to be doing it, so you have that little bit of pressure to do it as well. And you know what, like with exercise, I'm there, right? I need external motivation. I need to sign up for a class because I know I won't do it myself. So I totally get that accountability piece. And if you are just frustrated and ready to feel better, please join us in this program. Luca and I really, really want to help people just feel better. And if you are just looking for a way to kind of move through all of this where you can ask questions, whether they're directly related to the program or not, where you like this kind of live component and where you can talk to Luca and I, and we can help you really customize and personalize this experience, then Kitchen Haven 101 is for you. So that was a really long list of questions, but I just wanted to make sure that, we're kind of coming at this from every angle, and so that you're really clear on whether you're actually going to jump on board with something that's right for you. Mm-hmm. Luca, I think you've probably covered this pretty well, but will low histamine help everybody?
That's a really good question. Yes, low histamine has the potential of helping a lot of people, but more than that, for some people in that detective stage is where you start to see some of the relief. And I wanted to highlight this because I think we often go into programs or we think, oh, this is the solution I need. And to be 100% clear, it could be, if you're reacting to histamine and things, there is a potential that you are reacting to a lot of different compounds. And we can't take all of those foods out because you're going to be eating 4 foods. And I don't know anybody who can go from eating 75 foods to 4 foods and not feel super sad. So we need to move through it at a manageable pace. And yeah, going low histamine is the first step. Then we figure out those compounds that are contributing for you. But more than that, we haven't really said this yet. Going low histamine is great. So I guess you're taking out the high histamine foods. But if you take the foods that offend out and that's all you do, you're not going to see the results you want. You have to put in the foods that do the repair. So those are also part of the consideration when we're helping you move through these stages. What are those big hitters like your low histamine meat stocks, like the ghee, and why it's so important to actually get this into your regimen? And we get into the specifics of which of those foods will do the repair so that all of those other compounds are not also problematic for you. If you do the repair piece, that's awesome. So take the foods that offend out, part 1, yeah. Do the foods that do the repair, part 2, and then bring stuff back in slowly over the course of time. And that's the goal of it. So even if you still have histamine-mediated symptoms after you do that first stage, then know that, oh, I must be one of those people where there's something else contributing as well. That's where we do the detective work. It's really hard to send you for any kind of testing to figure out which compounds you might be potentially reacting to. This way, we move at a slow enough pace that feels safe for the body. It's part of the madness to the method. There's a method to the madness. That's what I meant to say. Awesome. Okay. So we have 4 of our main points. So why don't you start with our first main point that could potentially help you say, yes, this is for me.
Yeah, yes, this is for me. Are you frustrated? So maybe you've been navigating this on your own and you're finding it's challenging. Maybe, we've been talking about some of this complexity. It's not just about going low histamine. It's about bringing in, I'm so glad you brought up that point, Luca. It's bringing in the reparative foods. And maybe you're just not seeing the results that you want, or maybe you've even worked with other practitioners and you feel like they haven't really listened to your needs and customized things. So you're frustrated from that end. So yeah, if you're feeling frustrated with the whole dietary thing, then consider that this is the place for you. Luca, what else?
So the next piece, I got a family in the background living in our home. So let's just let them be part of the cacophony in the background. But number 2, do you want to reduce your symptoms? That's a good question to ask yourself. We're going to do a really comprehensive look at how the foods and mast cells triggers are contributing to the picture and what might else be in the picture contributing to things. So ask yourself, do you want to reduce symptoms? What's the third one?
Do you want to get at the root? So again, we've talked about going low histamines and not addressing why histamine is an issue for you. So it's really about digging a little bit deeper. And if you want to do that deeper dig and find out some of the other things that can be contributing to this, then this is for you. Luca, what's our last one?
Last one, do you want support? Are you tired of doing this thing by yourself? You do not have to do it by yourself. We are here for you. Group outcomes are always way better than doing stuff one-on-one. It is quite remarkable to me when I work one-on-one with clients and then I work in groups to see that people in groups have much better outcomes because you have that accountability piece. So do you need support? Are you tired of doing this on your own? You are not alone. These are the 4 questions to ask yourself. Are you frustrated? Do you want to reduce your symptoms? Do you want to get at the root? And do you need support? What's the last piece? Recipes? Do we have any?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got great recipes. Oh, we're so excited about. So the recipes we'll be sharing with you are some of the ones from the cookbook. And so you will be getting these recipes in advance of the cookbook, which is pretty exciting. We're so excited about these recipes. We spent so much time putting them together. And we've tried to come up with really delicious recipes that are easy to make in the kitchen and that are great replacements for some of the favorite foods that you might be missing right now.
Like tomatoes. Some of the other big foods that, there are, histamine dumping foods like spinach, like pineapple. These are some of the foods that we all think are anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
But it's not anti-inflammatory for everybody. So we talk about good things and easy recipes that are delicious and fairly straightforward to be able to produce them in your own home. So what's the next step? Somebody said, okay, this is me. What should they do next, Tracy?
They should sign up.
That's very straightforward. In the links just below this video, you are going to see links for the next available waitlist. So we'll have a waitlist open for the next time we're going to be running this. Not clear on how many times a year we're going to run it yet. But the first one, we are starting in May of 2022. And so the waitlist guarantees you a spot in the program if you want it. It does not tie you to that spot, and there's not a financial investment just yet. So it just saves your spot, and you get first dibs. You get 3 days before everybody else opens up to everybody else. So it saves you a spot so you can join us. So get on the wait list first. If we happen to be opening our registration right now, then below this video, you will also see a link for direct registration if the registration is currently open. So follow the link just below this video to get in on the action. And hit us up if you have any questions. We are always here to help make this a little bit of an easier transition for you in order for you to feel better. That's our goal, really. We want you to feel better.